Okay, hi, I'm Arun. I'm a Bangalore boy, and I grew up in the city in the 70s and 80s when India was a different country. Bangalore was a laid-back town. I actually grew up hating history, and my basic intent when I was growing up was to run away from the city because there was no opportunity here, there was no future here. So I went to the big city of Madras, did my engineering, and then I worked in Bombay and Delhi, and I briefly went overseas to London and New York. And after 10 years in the corporate world and traveling the world, I'd had enough. I came back home in 2003 to my beloved Bangalore, and suddenly the city that I had run away from had become the city where people from all over the world were coming in. It had become the gateway to India, and they'd all come here to discover India. And the problem with my city was we don't have a Taj Mahal, we don't have the big forts, we are not a tourist city. And so while being a local, I was terribly concerned about the fact that there was nothing to show people who came. And in fact, if you asked a local Bangalorean what is there to see in the city, they would say, oh, there's nothing here to do, just go to Mysore. This troubled me because I traveled around the world, and wherever I went, I found a lot of pride in the local people on the local tours that I went. So I decided to tell the story of Bangalore, but there was one problem. I didn't know it either. So I made it my business to find out more about my city, and I loved the story so much. I threw up my job and I decided to become a tour guide. This was in 2005, and in the last 8 years, I'm happy to say, I've been privileged to take thousands of people on walks of my city. These could be country presidents, these could be boards of directors of companies, these could be highly influential journalists, it could be scientists, conferences, students from around the world who come in to study India. The interesting thing about Bangalore is not a city of monuments or buildings, and I just go out and say it. I say there are stories here everywhere. So when I started doing these walks, I decided to do a walk on MG Road, a road that everyone thinks they know. But there are so many surprises hidden in Bangalore, and I discovered that wherever I went in the city, I found fascinating stories. And rather than foreign tourists who I thought would come on my walks, it is more and more the local Bangalorean who wants to discover his own neighborhood and feel some sense of pride in it. I'm standing now in what used to be an old lake bed off Old Airport Road, and in my memory this was a place with lots of mosquitoes and very swampy. But then I discovered that when they were excavating the Bangalore airport runway down the road, they found old Roman coins dating back to the time of Augustus Caesar, which means Bangalore was an important part of an overland trade route. Then I discovered in the 10th century, when the Chola Empire was at its height in South India, Bangalore was actually a western fringe of, or a Chola Mandala. In the 15th century, there was a man called Kempe Gowda who came all the way from Yelahanka and conquered Ulsoor and Damlur and tried to create a city with the area where I'm standing now as its eastern fringe. In the 18th century, when the British forces, having lost to George Washington in America, decided to come to India, they chose to march along this very own road, and they camped outside this huge lake, which actually supplied them water before they went to take on Tipu Sultan. Had this battle gone any other way, the British Empire may never even have started. And once the British were here, lots of interesting things happened. There were two scientists who apparently began taking measurements of the topography close to where I'm standing, which became the basis for the great trigonometric survey of India and the basis of the world's maps. A few years later, a gentleman was doing research on mosquitoes in the Ulsoor Lake, and he was the first Nobel laureate for medicine from England. In the 1940s, I'm told there were seaplanes that landed on this lake bed before they actually took off for wartime duty. And in World War II, lots of pilots took off from here and actually prevented the Japanese from taking over India. In the year 2007, I'm told, down the road, when Intel designed its latest chip as a successor to the Pentium, they claimed that much of the research work was done in a building that is now housed in this very same lake bed. If you start looking at it, every place in Bangalore has a fascinating story behind it, and that is what I do. I show people things about the city they never expected, and I'm very glad that Bangaloreans and people from around the world come out in huge numbers to walk and explore and experience this city.